Okay, today's October 11th, 2011. You're on the textbook, page 95. Blue notebook, page 103. Take your notes there. We're going to combine lesson 2.3 and 2.4. I'll quickly review the fast way to do equations written like this. Sorry, like the one below. And that is the form x squared plus b at x plus c. We'll show you guys the shortcut to do that, and then we're going to get into when we actually have a coefficient in front of x squared. Okay, so if you guys recall from your quiz, when we're trying to factor an expression like this, we're going to look for the product of the last number, two factors, and they need to add up to our middle number, or middle coefficient, which is b. So we need something that multiplies to our c, and in this case c is 12. And those two numbers also need to add up to our b. In this case b is 7. Okay, so we're going to split them up. Two numbers need to add to 7, and they need to multiply to 12. Okay? All right. So we figured out that the numbers 3 and 4 both add to 7 and multiply to 12. So when we go to put them in factored form, those two numbers we just found are going to be our last terms. We're going to put them on the second term in the bracket. So we had positive 3 and positive 4. And the first term, because there is no coefficient in front of the x squared, is just going to be x in both of the brackets. So again, we found 3 and 4. They were our second terms, and our first terms are x and x. Okay, so exact same example. What I'm going to do this time is, first I'm going to recognize the coefficient in front of the x squared. What number is technically there? 1. Okay? I need to write out all the factors of 1. What are they? 1 and 1. So I'm going to write them out in a column, okay? You're going to learn that you really don't need to write the columns after, but we're just using it to organize. The next thing I want you to do is find the factors of 12. So I'm going to write those out. 1, 12, 2, 6, 3, and 4. And again, those are each in their own little column, okay? Finally, this is the last way you set it up. We're going to put little 2 equal signs. I know I need to add them together, and they need to add to our middle term, which is 7. So I put the 7 down here. So this is how I'm going to want you guys to start setting this up, okay? So you've written all the factors of the first term right here. And sometimes there's more than one column. You might get 2 or 3. And all the factors of the last term in columns also. 7 is our b term. Okay? Yeah, I just take the 7. This one's positive, so we leave it as positive 7. You just take it and put it down there. Okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply the first column by one of the second sets of columns. We've got to figure out which one in order to add up to make 7. So we're going to walk through this slowly to start. First of all, I'd go 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 12 is 12. Any combination makes 7? No. Okay, I'm not done yet. I have to go across the columns too. 1 times 12 is 12. 1 times 1 is 1. Any combination? No. So we know this column here doesn't work. Okay? Now we're going to try it with the second column. Now you're going to notice, because they're both 1, the first terms, we're always going to end up with the same numbers here. But that will change as we use different numbers. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 6 is 6. 2 and 6, can I get 7? No. And if I go back the other way, I still get 2 and 6. Will I get 7? No. So I know the second column doesn't work. Finally, last column, 1 times 3 gives me 3, and 1 times 4 gives me 4. Do they work? Okay. Now, this is where it's important. I know it doesn't seem important because we're doing a simple example, but as we get into farther ones, you're going to have to remember this. Remember that I multiplied the top one by 3 and the bottom one by 4. I'm going to put 2 arrows there to help me recall this. Okay? When I go to put them in factored form, I draw my 2 brackets first. Okay? And here's my 1. So that's the number I put in front of the x. I have 1x in one column, and I have 1x in the other column. Now the last 2 numbers have to go in opposite columns, or sorry, opposite brackets. So this 1 I put down here. So this 3 has to go in the opposite bracket. It becomes the opposite term. So I put positive 3 in this one. And this 1 I put in this column. So the 4 goes in an opposite bracket. Now I know what I did seems redundant. But once we get into coefficients that aren't 1, it becomes very important. Okay, so here's our second example. Okay, like we said before, I'm going to get the factors of my a term, which is our first term. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3. Yeah, or, yeah, good enough. Now, factors of the last term. So 1 and 8, and 2 and 4. Those are all my factors. I'm going to set it up. I know they're going to have to eventually equal 2 terms that add up to our b, which is 14. Okay, we started again. So it has to add up to 14. Now, because there's only 1 column, okay, we're going to go with the first set of columns. So we're going to go across 1 times 1, 3 times 8. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 8 is 24. Any combination of those get to 14? Okay, let's go across. 1 times 8 and 3 times 1, we get 3 and 8. Any combination of those work? No, we can't get those to be 19. Or sorry, 14. So the first column does not work. Let's try our second column. 1 times 2 and 3 times 4. Does that work? Yes, that works perfectly. So we have 2 and 12. Those are going to be, we know that 2 and 12 add up to 14, so they work. So our numbers in the column are going to be the last terms in the brackets. Okay? But here's what's important. Remember I told you you need to remember what you multiplied by. So we did the 1 times 2 and the 3 times 4. I'm going to put my first terms in first. So I have 1x and 3x. Okay? Now, because I multiplied the 1 times 2, the 2 has to go in the opposite bracket of the 1. Okay? So because the 1 is in the first bracket, my positive 2 has to go into the second bracket. Same idea with the other one. We did 3 times 4. My 3 is in the second bracket, so the 4 has to go into the first bracket. Okay? So our final answer is x plus 4 times 3x plus 2. Question 2a from your textbook. Okay, very first thing I told you to do, you want to find the factors of your a term. And remember, we're written like this, ax squared bx plus c. So this is our theoretical model. We want to find the factors of our a, which is 6. So the factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Okay? I'm just going to move this here because we're going to need that space. Then we need to find the factors of our c term, which is 4. 1 and 4, 2 and 2. Now remember, each of these are in their own column. They're separate from the other ones. When we go to set it up, we know it has to add up to our b term, which is 5. So we put 5 down here, or positive 5. And we know the products of the two numbers, whenever we multiply by each other, the products are going to need to add to 5. So let's get started. We're going to go through the whole process so you guys get used to this. So the first column I'm going to work with is 1 and 6. So I'm going to multiply 1 times 1 and 6 times 4. That gives me 1 and 24. Any combination of that work to 5? Then we're going to go across. 1 times 4, 6 times 1. We get 6 and 4. Any combination work? No. So this column doesn't work. I'm not going to scratch it out yet, though, because I may need to use it with our second set of columns. Okay. So our next one, we're going to try 1 and 2, 6 and 2. That gives us 2 and 12. Does that work? No. Then we go diagonally. 1 times 2, 6 and 2, exact same numbers. Do either of those work? No. So I've actually tried the first column with both of the columns over here, and none of them worked. So I know my first column doesn't work. So I'm definitely going to be using the terms in this column. I have to figure out which of the last two columns to use now. So same idea again. 1 times 2, 3 times 4. That gives us 2 and 12. No. Let's go diagonally. 2 times 4, 3 and 1. That gives us 3 and 8. Does any combination of 3 and 8 make 5? How would I do it? Okay, so actually, when we have 3 and 8, if 3 is a negative term, we can add up to 5. Okay? So what that means is the terms, remember, we got to remember what we multiplied by. We did our 3 times 1 and 2 times 4. We also have to make sure, this 3 here, in order for it to be negative, that means this 1 would have had to be negative. Okay? So I actually need to make that a negative number. And just to double check that it works, negative 1 times 4, does that equal negative 4? Yes. Okay? The two numbers should multiply to our last term. Now, I didn't put the negatives in till the end. I don't want you guys to hold off on them until the end. Okay? So I know that I needed negative 1 as one of my terms. So when I go to put it in the brackets now, we're going to put our first terms in. So we have 2x and 3x. Now, here's the important part, our second terms. Remember, I multiplied 3 by negative 1. So the 3 and negative 1 have to go in opposite brackets. So the negative 1 goes into this bracket. Same with our 2 and our positive 4. 2 goes in one bracket, so the positive 4 has to go into the other bracket. And that's it. Our factored form is 2x minus 1 times 3x plus